With me to discuss is Gloria Allred. She is a women and victims' rights lawyer joining us this morning. We are so glad to have you with us. So let's begin, Gloria, with these recent emails. How significant are they that they mention President Donald Trump?
Also, if I may add, beside, thank you for having me, is that I have represented 27 victims, survivors of Jeffrey Epstein. I do think that these emails are significant, which is why they are causing such a political storm in Washington, and I might add an emotional storm as well for many of the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and Ms. Maxwell. Of course, they need to be put in context, but we know quite a bit so far about Jeffrey Epstein and Ms. Maxwell having been convicted of sex trafficking. And she did have her interview once she was incarcerated with the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, who was formerly the criminal defense attorney for now President Trump. But in any event, Ms. Maxwell, when she was interviewed, denied that Mr. Trump had done anything inappropriate as far as she was concerned that she had seen. But also, she said that she didn't recall that Trump was at Epstein's house, which is extremely important. She didn't say he wasn't at Jeffrey Epstein's house, just that she didn't recall, which sounds very much like a scripted answer.
Do you think, though, sorry to cut you off,
that's what
do you think
said.
that she lied to him during that interview, Gloria?
No, I'm saying didn't recall is a way of having some wiggle room with an answer without saying that he was there or wasn't there. She kind of hedges and says she didn't recall. But of course, in another email that was produced yesterday, Jeffrey Epstein indicates that Trump was at his house 4 hours with Virginia Giuffre, the name being confirmed by the Republicans, having been redacted by the Democrats. So here we are. This is going to be a leak, which will continue because there are thousands of pages of Epstein files. The survivors have rightfully called for the complete the complete delivery of all of the Epstein trials, that an information investigation, so that they can be made public. All the polls show that the public, Democrat, Republican, independents, want transparency, want all of the files released. And by the way, even though a vote will be upcoming next week on the floor of the House to release the files, and we don't know which way that will go, but even then, it has to go to the Senate also. Most likely, the president's going to have to decide to release them. But they could do all this. The Department of Justice could release it voluntarily. It doesn't require a vote. But that's not what they're doing. They have been withholding it. They have been delaying. They have been evading and avoiding. And all of this is very painful for the survivors to have to battle to get the truth, because what they want is the truth and transparency. And so far, they're not getting it. They have to battle in order to win it.
Gloria, and I want to ask you a little bit more about that, because as you point out, you represented many of the victims. How are they feeling? How do they feel when they hear President Trump say that this is all a Democratic contrived smear campaign, and knowing that we are so close yet so far from learning what was in the Epstein files? How does that sit with them?
Well, I think it's very emotional and traumatic, and many of them have said that, because they're trying to put what Jeffrey Epstein did to them, many of them being underage girls, in other words, children, when they were sex trafficked by Epstein and Ms. Maxwell, and or were sexually abused as adults and trafficked as well. And they're trying to heal from all that. But when they are constantly having to be reminded of what was done, and the truth being denied to them, it's just emotionally very, very challenging for them. And I admire their courage in speaking out. Many of them, by the way, would like to have their privacy. So you
Yeah.
see a small number speaking out, which is very courageous of them. But there are many that don't want to be identified, and they're afraid that at some point their names won't be redacted, their names will come out. They feel ashamed, even though it was not their fault, and they don't want that to happen. I'm aware that there are some videos which if they were distributed publicly, which they never should be, or leaked, that that's child pornography, and that should never happen, because many of them didn't even know they were being videoed. In addition, if they did know, they were potentially being blackmailed by Jeffrey Epstein not to tell, because he had them. And so, there are many challenges for them in addition to what's going on in the United States Congress. It's a political battle. But, I think that the representatives ultimately will decide they need to be on the right side of this and the right side of history. And remember, this is about the lives of children, the lives of adult females, and those matter perhaps more than their political allegiance.
I want to ask you lastly, being a lawyer, I heard a lawyer on another network saying this morning that there are real dangers with the release of these emails. They're out of context. Everybody's jumping to conclusions when they see Donald Trump's name mentioned. What is your take on that?
Well, apparently that, the president is concerned that it's out of context, and that, well, he's called it a, scam and a hoax and many other things. That really doesn't deal with the specifics of what happened. If I were he, I would just say, okay, release everything. I'm not guilty of anything. And let's get this over with. I have very important things to do. But that's not what he's doing. And so the more he denies, the more he calls names, the more he says it's a political battle. They shouldn't be released. They don't, it's a problem. It's a problem for him politically. Okay. But I'm more concerned about the survivors and how they're reacting to it. So, yeah, it would be great to, but there's so many ways that this is a suspicious trail of events, from the fact that Jeffrey Epstein got a sweetheart deal in 2008. And, it got to go to his office every day as part of the punishment, but only have to go sleep in jail at night for a number of months, not years. And the fact that there are allegations that even when he was in office, in his office during the day, he was still sexually abusing some young women.